Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. More on Jalen Hood-Schifino, the Lakers' first-round pick. Plus, free agency opens on Friday. Where are the Lakers going to go? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcast, it's always going to be free, never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, hang out with almost 18,000 subscribers to the program over there. Everybody commenting, leaving questions, leaving thoughts, many of which are about Lakers first round pick Jalen Hood-Schifino, who we're going to talk about today. We're also getting geared up for free agency, which kicks off Friday, 3:00 Pacific time. It's no longer a midnight phone call to Timofey Mozgov. It is right in the middle of the afternoon on Friday. And the good news, Andy, is we can talk about both of those things with our guest today, Jacob Ruud. He is a writer at Silver Screen and Roll. That's where you know all of his Lakers stuff. He also hosts Locked On Hoosiers for the network, so he's been covering Jalen Hood-Schifino for a year. Worlds colliding in a perfect way for Jacob and for us. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've mentioned this a couple other places, but didn't allow myself really to consider Jalen going to the Lakers, even though they were right in the same area of the draft. So when it happened on Thursday, it was a wave of excitement, and it's been a really fun time since Thursday to just kind of realize that I still get to watch Jalen Hood-Schifino play basketball.
That's pretty awesome, man. Like what is it about Jalen Hood-Schifino that would make you want to see him on the Lakers? Like, just in terms of the trajectory that you saw him on. He was only there at Indiana for a year, and it's my understanding he had to switch positions while he was at Indiana. So before we even get into some of the specifics of his game, if there was something overarching that made you even just hopeful at the idea of being with the Lakers, what was it?
I think one of the bigger things is almost it's an intangible he has, which is he just kind of has that it factor, which is super cliche, and you hear it a lot, but in like the big moments this season, he stepped up time and time again with few exceptions. And so it was just always fun to see him when the lights got brighter and brighter. He kept responding and kept playing at a high level and kept improving throughout the entire season. So all season long, it was just an upward trajectory of progression for him, that by season's end, you're always sad when your season comes to an end unless you win the national title, but especially with him and Trace Jackson-Davis, the two of them, that they're playing so well. You just wanted that run to continue as long as it possibly could. So it was a fun year for him, and to see him, as you said, he came in as a shooting guard, basically, finished the year as the guy at point guard, and to see the progress he made along the way, I just wasn't ready for it to end at that time. So it's exciting that it doesn't have to end, that I get to watch him hopefully continue that upward trajectory with the Lakers.
One of the things, and we'll get into the skill set here before we talk about some of the decisions. Lakers got to make some choices about their pending potential free agents in Malik Beasley, Mo Bamba. They got some important payroll questions there, which we'll get to later in the show. But one of the things that I think was impressive to Lakers fans was listening to Hood-Schifino talk and listen to management talk about him from a cultural standpoint. Like he seems like a really good fit. What did you see, when he was in Indiana that led you to believe that, not just as a skill set, on the court, but that, kind of culturally off the court, he'd be a good fit here?
Well, this is someone that has been preparing for a long time to be in the NBA. He came from Montverde, where they churn out NBA players all the time. So this has been a very serious goal of his for a while. And he came to IU with kind of that level of professionalism. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to college for a year to party and have fun, and then we'll go to the NBA and start taking it seriously. He understood that this was kind of the next step in his journey to the NBA before making it to the NBA. So he showed up, he took advantage of what was offered to him now, and whether it was, the coaching staff, player development, all those things, he took advantage of that, and which led to the improvements he made throughout the year. And he always treated this like just as a professional, like this was almost his job, and that he knew what he needed to do to get to the next level. So I think that comes across when you hear him talk, and when you hear Rob Pelinka talk about him, that he has a mindset that he's an NBA player, and that was his goal all along. And he knew the steps he needed to take along the way to get to the NBA, and he didn't shortcut anything along the way. He didn't veer off the path or take a detour or anything like that. It's always been, since he was at Montverde. I mean, you go to Montverde to become an NBA player. So since he's done that, this has been the goal, and he never wavered from that.
And that was actually Andy's goal. He went to Montverde. It just didn't work out for him in the same way.
No, I took the partying route at Montverde, and in retrospect, it was a waste of everybody's time.
They do not let him back on campus. They hate him there. He really ruins everything.
Your jersey's not retired there?
No, but my beer bong was. So it all
even
worked
better.
out,
Even better.
Taking a look at Hood-Schifino more specifically, offensively, what are the skill sets that he has that you think make him most NBA ready, the things that can help him stay on the court? What are the areas that still need some refinement, development, that sort of thing?
Well, the mid-range shot, I'm sure everybody has seen at this point. That's going to be the way he can score at the NBA level from day one, really. He is as comfortable as anybody I've seen in the college game, really, at taking those mid-range jumpers. Not even just mid-range jumpers. It's just really everything from the rim to the three-point line. He feels pretty comfortable in, which includes kind of floaters. He has a lot of kind of that in-between game as well. So he's going to be able to come in right away and score at that level, or score in the mid-range. And his passing is good. I think it's more his feel for the game. He ran a lot of pick and roll at IU, and he did it in high school as well. So he has a good feel for the game. He knows how defenses are going to react to him, to his roll guy, whether he's rolling to the rim, popping, things like that. So he knows what pass he needs to make. There were times where he didn't make that pass, but it was never a matter of like him being surprised. He always knew what he needed to do. It was more just an execution thing at times. Where he's going to need to improve is that three-point line. He was super streaky, and he had games where he would hit 5-6 three-pointers, but then he had games where it was way off. And so if you even look at his three-point percentage, he hit 37 threes this season, and 16 of them came in 3 games. So outside of that, he struggled a lot from the three-point line. He's got to get a lot better, and that's going to really determine his ceiling, whether he's a role-playing backup point guard for his career, or whether he's a guy that can start and be a part of a contending, really good team in the NBA. I think that's going to be kind of the swing skill for him offensively.
We were kicking this around a little bit before we started recording, and get into this before we take a break. How does he fit with? Let's assume, and the Lakers, I think, are going to try to bring back D'Angelo Russell, and I think actually it's starting to get easier and easier to come up with a construction that works for everybody, because the market for D'Lo is not necessarily going to be fierce. They're going to try to bring back Dennis Schröder. That could be a little trickier, just because the Lakers are limited in what they can pay him. But let's assume they have a backcourt that looks somewhat similar from a personnel standpoint to what they had finishing last year. Throw Austin Reeves in there. Like, how does he fit with the group? Like, are there combinations that would or would not work with who you could play him next to?
I think the thing that'll help him, I agree that I'd be surprised if Dennis comes back, and that would be the one guy that would be probably the clunkiest fit, because neither are particularly good 3-point shooters. Dennis has his moments similar to what Jalen did in college. So that'd be kind of the clunkiest fit. If it is D'Lo and Austin Reeves, I think it really helps that both of them can be 3-point shooters to space the floor and allow Jalen to attack the rim. It helps that both of them can play off the ball. Jalen can play off the ball too. He did that a little bit early on in the season. There was an injury to IU's point guard early December, and he was forced to play point guard for the rest of the year. So he barely was off the ball. He can do it. There's not a ton of sample size there, but the fact D'Lo and Austin are probably a lot more used to it will help that acclimation into the NBA as well. So offensively, I think it's a fit that will be easier for him, that I think you can put him with either Austin or D'Lo, and they'll just mesh together well, because Jalen can be the guy that runs the pick and roll and kicks out to Austin or to D'Lo or something like that. So I actually really like the fit with the guys that presumably the Lakers are going to have back in the backcourt next season.
All right, a little more on this, and then we'll dive into Lakery stuff, because, again, huge decisions that the Lakers have, some coming up as early as Thursday. I think it might even be minutes. So, like, basically today, the Lakers have to choose.
With all the tampering going on, Brian, these decisions have been in the works.
No, but
since
the
really
Bamba
2 or 3
Beasley
weeks
thing is
ago.
a June 29th deadline. So
Yeah, I know.
I'm just not sure exactly when.
It's all tangentially related to the tampering. Come on,
That's
we're all
true.
adults here.
But so we'll dive into some of the Lakers free agency questions, and targets, trade options, all of that next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by eBay Motors, and for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player's a perfect fit, and it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can make sure every part you need fits right the first time around. So just add your ride to My Garage and then check for the green check to know that the part will fit, or you get your money back. And just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's really easy, simple even, to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
All right, Andy, you had one more question on Hood-Schifino before we move on to the next stuff.
Yeah, I'd seen a lot of consensus, Jacob, that defense alone could maybe be the thing that helps Hood-Schifino find a place on this roster as an actual playing time next season, when it comes to just the rookie mistakes or that learning curve, that his defense, if nothing else, is at an adequate enough level to play NBA games. Is that your assessment as well?
Yeah, he's a really strong defender and a really good point of attack defender, which I think the Lakers lacked multiple guys of. Dennis was that again last season, but again, he may not be back this upcoming season. So I think that's another way he fits with someone like D'Lo, where he can be the point of attack defender and D'Lo can be the guy chasing around screens and things like that. IU, when they were healthy, which was not often last season, early in the year, they were a team that wanted to play really aggressively, man-to-man, pressuring guys way up the court. And it worked because Jalen can play that well on the ball. He has the length, the wingspan to do that. IU just had to kind of pull back on it when they lost a guard because they didn't have great guard depth. So he didn't do a lot of it as the season went along. I think that'll be an area that he'll be able to make an impact and stay on the floor, even on nights where his jumper might be struggling. And I think there's some room for improvement with off-ball defense, but a lot of that I would just attribute to being a 19-year-old that is just at times just kind of loses focus or gets caught off guard, something like that. I don't think there's really any bigger concern than that. And so I think defensively he'll be able to stick on the court and compete from the start, and it's not going to be a weakness like it is with a lot of guards, a lot of rookie guards that come in, a lot of rookie guards in this class. I think that's one big difference between him and guys like Jet Howard and stuff like that were right in that range for the Lakers, is that Jalen absolutely be able to come on or get on the floor and compete right away.
All right, let's look a little bit at some of the stuff coming up. Like, this is one of those trades that would need to happen presumably pretty quickly. I guess, not necessarily. So, but like before free agency, there was an intriguing fake trades, potential trades that ESPN would love to see. That was posted on Tuesday, and it includes the Lakers packaging Beasley and Bamba, both presumably guaranteed at that point, for Fred VanVleet in a sign and trade. And they go through all the machinations and this and that, but it is a reminder that in theory, the Lakers, if they want to make moves ahead of free agency with those guys, need to do it quickly. If they want to decide what, to decline those options or pick them up, they need to do it quickly. That deadline is the 29th. Jacob, what would you do with both of them? Andy and I talked about if you had to pick one on yesterday's show for Monday, but I'm just curious what ideally you would do with both of those guys.
I've gone back and forth. If you would have asked me before the draft, I would have told you I probably would have tried to trade them for something. Knowing that Jalen Hood-Schifino is the pick changed my mind. But I still think that I've gone back and forth because, it was two guys who were non-factors in the postseason, largely speaking. Bamba was obviously injured. Beasley kind of started out in the playoffs playing.
Beasley was a factor. He just wasn't a good one.
Yeah, it wasn't a positive factor for the Lakers.
Right, exactly.
And so it's two guys, if you're looking for places to upgrade, those are kind of the natural spots. Having said that, I've started to kind of dig more into the free agency class and look at guys the Lakers can get with the mid-level exception that they're going to have. This is a really rough free agency class. And if you let these guys walk, if you turn down Malik's option, or if you waive Mo Bamba, it's going to be tough to replace them. Naturally, you're not going to get that money to spend, but you're also, there's just not a lot of kind of good role player type of guys in that range that you're going to be able to bring in that are going to be better. And so the more I think about it, the more I think I would just keep both of them. And if nothing else, you have a couple of expiring contracts that you can package together at some point during the season and try to find somebody else. But right now, as it stands, I think I would probably bring them back, which, largely, if you're bringing them back, if you're bringing D'Lo back, if you're bringing Reeves back, like Rui, you're largely running it back, which was kind of the message Rob Pelinka had at his exit interview.
Andy, you've been pretty adamant as we've started to look at the way the market is taking shape that you think both Russell and Hachimura could end up getting less money than at least people thought they might get at the end of the season. Where D'Lo, people thought maybe was around closer to 20. I know you've said you think it'll be less. People were thinking, 15, 16, 17, 18, maybe even for Rui. We were talking on Monday's show that it could be a little less than that. Does that impact the way you would look at Bamba and Beasley, particularly Beasley? Because I know we talked about Bamba and the need to bring him back for Monday's show.
I would have to have all the numbers in front of me. You know what I mean? Like, just to make sure, where exactly you're heading in with the luxury tax and the aprons and all that stuff. Not because
I'm just saying that, like, it doesn't, like, the Malik. I agree. You don't bring Malik Beasley back if it's going to, push you past the second apron. Suddenly you can't make a trade. You can't sign, but let's assume it keeps you below that threshold.
I think if you bring those guys back, it gives you the absolute most optionality when it comes to the trades that you can make, throughout the course of the season, when you start seeing who might become available. If you don't have those salary slots filled, you obviously could theoretically still have them with Reeves and Rui and Russell if all three of those guys are still back. But those are also guys that you are earmarking for more important roles because you think they're better players. So, Beasley and Bamba, best case scenario, they actually really contribute and help, and then your team becomes that much better. But they would still have utility as, expirings. So in a perfect world, you bring them back just for the pure optionality of it.
Yeah.
Again, it's not my money, and I'm not particularly worried about Jeannie Buss's personal finances. So, I mean, I only care about how it affects the mechanics of what the Lakers can realistically or reasonably be expected to do if those guys are on the books, assuming there's still a good amount of flexibility. There's an argument to be made for bringing them back, especially with somebody like Bamba, for example. I don't think they can do better than him on the free agent centers market. Like, I just, with the mid-level that they'll have, even if they had a full non-taxpayer mid-level, I'm not sure they're going to be able to do better than Bamba. Beasley, I'm a little less attached to, just because I think guys who can only shoot are easier to find than guys who can do what Bamba does, even inconsistently. They
have no front court depth. I mean, they have more guards than they do forward.
I think Bamba is more important at this point now to retain than Beasley. But look, in a perfect world, if you can make keeping them both happen, sure, why not?
It's interesting too, Jacob. Like, the Collins trade. It seems like literally everybody who isn't like, there's, I think, 3 guys that are listed as, Murray and Sadiq Bey and Okonkwo in Atlanta. Basically, like, they seem willing to trade like everybody else on that entire roster. So, it does feel like, whether you're talking about, like the new CBA, the way teams are dumping players and stuff, it just feels handy to keep those, like Andy was saying, that optionality available to, with those salary slots for guys who aren't critical players, to give you the flexibility. They work so hard, Jacob, to get that flexibility. It'd be nice to see them keep it.
Yeah, and the new CBA, I think, is going to really change how a lot of teams approach team building, which was the goal of the new CBA. It's going to lead to situations where maybe a team like the Hawks are kind of having this, I don't even know if it's a fire sale, but they're certainly trying to move everybody. And if you have those expiring contracts, you're well positioned to take on one of those deals if you're willing to commit to some long-term money, which I assume the Lakers are, considering they're probably going to be offering multi-year deals to Reeves and Rui and Russell and things like that this in a couple days, I guess. So it's an interesting situation that, they, as you said, they worked hard to get this flexibility, and it'd be a little bit surprising if they just didn't do anything with it, which is probably more of an argument to bring them back. And I also think, just in general, I know there's a lot of focus on the playoffs and that Nuggets series and where the Lakers came up short, which is fair. The Lakers have some things they need to address to get to the Nuggets level, but there's 82 games as well during the regular season where you need guys and you need bodies and you need to keep people healthy.
A huge factor. Yeah.
Yeah. And they haven't been healthy. LeBron and AD have struggled with injuries mightily the last couple seasons. So having guys like Beasley and Bamba and at Rui, all those other guys, to absorb some of those minutes and let LeBron and AD have nights where they load manage and things like that, so that they could ramp up to the postseason, I think that matters a fair amount as well. So as much kind of focus as there is on the playoffs, and again, the Lakers have to do some things to fix the flaws that were shown in the playoffs, there's also, you have to get there first. And I think that's another reason to really strongly consider bringing Beasley and Bamba back.
All right. You mentioned, Jacob, that you took a look through the free agent roles, and it is a frightening and sad place to be. But we should take a look at it, because the Lakers have a little, the veterans minimum. They've got a mid-level that they can play around with, depending on especially what happens to Dennis Schröder. They've got decisions about guys like Lonnie Walker and whether or not they should try to make that happen. So we'll start throwing some names around. We'll do that next. So correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but like we're pretty confident the Lakers are going to be working with veterans minimum contracts and that one taxpayer mid-level. If you had, we're all working under that assumption. Andy, you too?
For the time being, yeah. I mean, I know I've seen some scenarios thrown out there where they could have the non-taxpayer mid-level. Great if it happens. I'm running with the assumption now that it's going to be taxpayer.
All right. So what can you get for that? Like what name? Because it is a bad market. It doesn't, there may be some guys that are sort of left holding the bag hoping that they might get more, but I don't know. Any good ideas out there, Jacob?
There's interesting enough.
Yeah. There's a couple that I noted. They're kind of familiar names. I think one of them that's probably going to be linked to the Lakers is Kevin Love, who
I would love that. No pun intended. I would love that.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, friend of LeBron, he's been kind of like tangentially linked to the Lakers. There hasn't really been anything strong, but everybody always just kind of assumed that he would come to the Lakers at some point. I think it makes sense now. We just mentioned that they don't have a ton of front court depth. Kevin Love showed that he still has some stuff left in the tank in the postseason. He honestly kind of surprised me how well he played at times in the postseason. So he fits well with kind of spacing and allowing AD to play in the post still and even playing alongside Bamba. And so I think that's a name that you could get with a non-taxpayer MLE. But I mean, even he's 34, 35. So he's also probably going to have some load managing nights, but he's still a guy that's done it, and he did it in the postseason this year. And I think those are the types of guys that they're really going to target with this non-taxpayer MLE.
Yeah,
or, excuse
LeBron
me,
tells
the taxpayer MLE. Yeah,
LeBron tells the brass, okay, you're not giving me Kyrie, you are giving me Kevin Love. I'm getting a reunion of sorts. I had a mini one last year with Tristan Thompson during the playoffs and stuff like that, but I am getting one of my guys back. Is there anybody else that jumps out at you as a potentially interesting addition that's even semi-realistic?
I mean, on the topic of reunions, Jeff Green maybe, who still is somehow doing this at 36, 30. Yeah, he's 30. He'll be 37 next season. Again, I mean, we just saw him in the Denver series playing well. They only played 6 guys basically, and he was one of them. So he still has some stuff left in the tank. And again, another one of those kind of veteran wings that's been around for a while that I think can give you 10, 12, 15 minutes off the bench. And on really good nights, maybe it's closer to 20, 25 minutes. But he's another guy that has the experience with LeBron. That season in Cleveland really kind of revitalized his career, I think, in a lot of ways. So I think he could be a name. I wouldn't be surprised. I was trying to think of a name. Like, they've done well with finding the Malik Monk, the Lonnie Walker, like the young guy that they feel has been misused. The one name I could come up with, which again is a familiar name and isn't technically, he's a restricted free agent, but Cam Reddish, if they renounce him, I would assume the Lakers are going to jump all over that.
I have been renouncing Cam Reddish for years, so
I don't see it, but I didn't really see it with Lonnie Walker either, and I was glad to be wrong there. They clearly have seen something with him that they like, because they have been.
Do you think that's actually a rumor, and how much like a real thing, and how much do you think that's he's a clutch guy, so everybody assumes?
Cam Reddish has been extremely available over the last 2 years. Like, you don't have to work that hard to get Cam Reddish if you really wanted him over the last couple seasons.
It's so odd because, like, as you said, he's been available. Like, he was straight up just not playing for the Knicks. But also the Lakers had like a line in the sand that they drew in getting Cam Reddish. So it's odd. I think looking at the stats, I didn't watch the Blazers much at the second half of the season. So statistically, it looks like he played decently. Yeah, exactly. He was probably their best player.
But it's like every other Cam Reddish run. It starts with this incredible burst of like, oh my God, Cam Reddish is awesome. And by the end, and like Portland was playing, people from like the 300 section of the Moda Center by the end of the season. Like, they were running lotteries and raffles to give playing time, and Reddish started to see his go down. He was, up in the 30s, and then it drops into the 20s, and maybe they're looking at other dudes, but he had a lot of 4-point games, 2-point games. Like, it was a minus 24 the last game of the season, minus 27 against the Knicks, on March 14th. I'm just like, I get that he looks like, if you were casting a movie and you could fix everything in post, Cam Reddish is your guy. I'm not. You mentioned
Lonnie Walker though just a second ago, Jacob. The max the Lakers can offer him, I think, is about 7.7, 7.8, because he's coming off of 1 year at the mid-level. How interested would you be in another go around with Lonnie? I mean, maybe there's a way that they give him another 1 year, 7 or something, or I think they do it smarter.
1-1, whatever.
Give him a 1-1, or maybe like a 2-year deal worth, say, 10, something like that. Give him like a little less annually, a little longer player option, that sort of thing. But just broadly speaking, another go around with Lonnie.
I think it would kind of depend how other things fall out, because I mean, I liked Lonnie, but he also got buried on the bench just because there were so many guards. So if you have Reeves and D'Lo and Jalen Hood-Schifino, if you think Max Christie is going to take a step forward, you're going to kind of quickly run out of minutes with the guard rotation. I guess Ham does love 3-guard lineup, so maybe there are more minutes to be had, but I would be interested to know how interested he is in running it back with the same kind of situation. I thought he did well at the beginning of the season. When they tried to play him later in the season after his injury, it felt like he was forcing things pretty badly, which you can't blame him. But then I thought he played in the playoffs like he did at the beginning of the season and won the Lakers a game. So I think, largely speaking, he would be a helpful player, but are you willing to play him over? I mean, how many?
Christie's interesting because I think he could be earmarked more as a backup 3, possibly, because he's 6'6", and according to Dave McMenamin at the exit interviews, he was talking with Christie afterwards, and Christie told him that he grew over the course of the season.
That's how young these guys are. They're still growing.
I know. So he, maybe he's closer to 6'7" now, or a little bit over 6'7". You're starting to get to a place where maybe Christie becomes a real option as a 3, and that could open up some space for Lonnie if you want to bring him in. If nothing else, the Lakers need a backup 3. If it's not going to be Max Christie, it's got to be somebody.
He's probably, Christie, more of like a Troy Brown Jr. replacement.
Yeah.
And which makes sense. Even then, you have a handful of other guards that you're going to be playing over Lonnie Walker or something like that. So it's just kind of a really crowded backcourt. If the Lakers really want to give minutes to Jalen Hood-Schifino, do they want to also sign Lonnie Walker and have them?
What about Troy, though? Like you mentioned Troy Brown. He always gets sort of like he gets forgotten in all these conversations, especially with positional need and then what guys are likely to make. It wouldn't surprise me if you could get Troy Brown again on another minimum deal. Like I'd be tempted, because for guys who are going to play and not play, whatever, Brown actually feels like a better fit and a better guy for that role than somebody like Walker or somebody like Beasley, who, you need those guys to be in rhythm to come in and score and shoot and all that stuff. I'm actually I'd love to see if there's a way for them to sort of just, Troy Brown doesn't find a market, just bring him back. Let him do Troy Brown stuff again. He was all right.
I think what surprises me about Troy Brown, which I didn't even really realize until after the season, he's 23 years old.
Yep.
Like he'll be 20, he'll turn 24 this summer, but he is really young. And I think this might just be me, but I was kind of looking at him as kind of maybe not a finished product, but that he largely was who he was. He improved throughout the season as well. And he played more than someone like Malik Beasley in the playoffs. And at times during the season had strong moments. There was a stretch kind of right around the trade deadline, right after the trade deadline, where he was really, really good.
Yeah.
So
he's a low usage, kind of gluey sort of dude who will put out effort on defense, Andy. I think that's...
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with Troy is, generally speaking, over the course of the season, I think he's one of those guys that plays better the more minutes you give him. Like, he's not somebody that if you give him 10 minutes, he can maximize those 10 minutes. Like, he really needs 15 to 20, I think, to find his comfort zone to really get his best overall utility, particularly if you want him to take shots at all. Like, he's not a good enough shooter that he can just get hot immediately. So you have to find the space for him. But assuming he can't do better than a bumped up veterans minimum that the Lakers could give him, yeah, I look, I like Troy on balance over the course of the year, so I'd be more than happy with bringing him back.
We will see who the Timofey Mozgov honorary phone call goes to on Friday. I suspect actually the Lakers will not be a headline maker out of the gate as free agency opens on Friday, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see what it looks like. You can follow everything at Silver Screen and Roll with Jacob Rude, great writer over there. Thanks so much for coming on, man. This was fun.
Yeah, anytime, guys.
All right, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show and hang out. Leave us questions, leave us comments. Please do that throughout the course of the summer. You will help drive this show forward. Looking forward to seeing what the Lakers might or might not do this weekend. But we'll see everybody before that on Thursday.